Hey there, I'm Tracy Spears, speaker, author, coach, and founder of Exceptional Leaders Lab. I'm super excited about today's episode as my guest is Marissa Levin. Let me just tell you a little bit about her, and I cannot do a full justice on the bio, but here are a few things you need to know. Marissa is an entrepreneur, speaker, best-selling author, mindset expert, and globally recognized growth strategist. A prolific writer, Marissa is one of Inc.'s magazine's most recognized leadership columnists and is also the author of the #1 best-selling book, Built to Scale: How Top Companies Create Breakthrough Growth Through Exceptional Advisory Boards. I bet we talk a little bit about that today. Throughout her 30-year entrepreneurial journey, Marissa has been recognized as a global influencer and trailblazer, was named as a Smart CEO, Smart 100 participant by Smart CEO magazine, which recognizes the top 100 CEOs. There's a lot of little pieces behind this, but I'm going to try to stick to the high points here. Been inducted into the Smart CEO Hall of Fame for outstanding and exemplary women's leadership, was named one of Washington's top 100 technology titans in the Washingtonian magazine, was a finalist for the Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year Award, many, many more. The list goes on and on. She holds a master's degree in human resources development and organizational development, is a credentialed coach certified by International Coach Federation, is certified in instructional systems design, and is a certified mastermind facilitator. Listen, all of that is amazing, but the next line is why you are going to listen in on this today. Marissa is committed to fulfilling her lifetime legacy mission to empower 1 billion people to live their most joyful lives. Oh my gosh, Marissa, welcome to the show. So glad to have you.
Thank you, Tracy. And I am so honored and grateful for the trust.
Of course, of course. You were so funny. Like the very first newsletter I sent out, and it was about joy. And I think you had like sent me the first email that said, "Oh my gosh, I have to talk to you. And I'm going to tell you why I have to talk to you. I'm on a mission to empower 1 billion people to live their most joyful lives." So there's no way I can't start with that as the first question. Tell us about that.
So, I, which I shared in my bio, and I'll share it with the group, with your audience. I am a 5-time entrepreneur. So, just launched my 5th company over my 30-year journey. I suppose I'm kind of addicted to the whole entrepreneurial process, right? And through the whole entire process, as I have built my companies, the one thing that has remained constant as I have gone into this process is I am driven by the joy that it brings me to fulfill a mission, to bring expertise to other people, to impart knowledge, to impart wisdom, to create environments where people thrive. It really is kind of what gives me what I call the biggest ROH, return on heartbeat. And so as I go into my 5th and final company, Marissa International, which is really the culmination of my 30-year journey, uh, I'm one of the things that I'm very good at is creating models. And I created a sixfold journey to joy framework, and it includes 6 components: path, purpose, power, potential, people, and play. And this is something that just through my own wisdom, my own reflection, my own experiences, and also just the thousands of entrepreneurs and leaders that I have coached and worked with along the way, this is what I've learned to be true, that we all have our own individual recipe for joy, but these really are the 6 primary components. And so I want to be able to package that so that people can access it and understand how they can truly dial into their most joyful nature.
Oh, wow. I listen, when you responded to that newsletter with that, you were one of so many people that said, "I am on a mission right now to be more joyful." Do you think the pandemic has had anything to do with this? Why do you think we're sitting here in this moment and your message or the message of joy is resonating so much with our audience?
So that's such a great question. The answer is yes, and okay. So I absolutely think that the pandemic had something to do with it. It gave us all an opportunity to pause, right? It put the entire world on pause for a moment where we could really reflect about what was important to us and how we were living our life. Not only did we have a reset and an opportunity to really think about the fragility of life, the sacredness of life, the value of life in a way that maybe we had not before because we were on autopilot. It also gave us that room, that time and space to reset, right? So I think that the pandemic was part of it. I also just think that where the world is right now is we are experiencing an elevation in consciousness. We are experiencing um, an awareness, an awakening of the importance of diversity and inclusion and equity in our entire social structure. And with all of this going on, people are saying, I want to be more connected to what is happening in the universe. I want to step into who I am. I want to get from behind the shadows, right? I want to find my voice. I want to be more connected to the universe. That's happening right now. And the other thing that is happening is that there's just a lot of talk about shadow work. I mean, I'm finding that, right? I'm really kind of digging into um, the the I don't want to say negative aspects to who we are, but the pieces of our personality that can cause us to forget the beauty that we all had inside. And so I just feel that on so many levels, people are really craving that path to inner joy and inner peace. We are not here to struggle, and they're looking for that solution.
Mm. So if I totally agree with you, and I do believe that there is the consciousness that we are watching and experiencing with each other and how we're connecting. At first I thought, is it the pandemic? Is it generationally? Is it that we got so far down because of everything that's happening? Like that was kind of the call to action, say, man, I really don't like in the being in this lower vibration or however you want to describe it. Like, I don't know. I guess it's a combination of all of that. But for you, when did you shift into this being the thing that you were really passionate about? Because I sense it had nothing to do with the pandemic, but I'm not sure. Tell me more.
So, that shift of like saying, my life's purpose, my sole purpose is about joy. It has been an evolutionary process. I've always been one who is deeply connected to others. I've always been one who wants to alleviate suffering and bring joy to others. It's how I was born, it's how I'm wired. I am deeply empathic, right? I am deeply intuitive. And through the work that I've done, I've always channeled my communications gifts to help people understand whatever, whatever I'm working on at the moment. I think for me, with my last company, what we focused on was leadership education and building corporate cultures where people felt seen and heard and safe and relevant and connected to something larger than themselves. And the reason that I started that company, Successful Culture International, which is what I just recently sold 2 months ago, was because in my first company, Information Experts, my mission was to the company's mission was to work with government agencies, private sector, nonprofits, to help them fulfill their mission through communication. And while that company fulfilled me on many levels, the main thing about that company was that I provided such a beautiful culture for my people. And that's why I started Successful Culture. And I loved running Successful Culture. But the reason that I went out of Successful Culture and decided that I needed to even go uh, deeper into helping other people be joyful um, is because the corporate sandbox became too small for me. And this is where the billion person goal kicks in, right? That I want to impact people all over the world. I want a billion people literally to recognize and know that they can live their most joyful lives. So this truly has been an evolutionary process, which is that's the story of all of our lives. Everything that we do prepares us for what's coming next.
Yeah, listen, that's so, and I love hearing that. And that's why we're called Shift Out Loud, because there's a shift, but the out loud part is how does it influence other people? How, when you've had your biggest shifts, I'll just ask you. So you've had 5 different companies.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing there were 5 pretty big shifts in that. Is that fair to say?
I would say, yeah. I mean, if I look back, even before that, I mean, the company before I started my first company, I was an undergraduate. My undergraduate degree was English with a concentration in Shakespeare. Okay. I did not know I was going to go into business. I did not like that was never on my radar. Right. I started my first company 30 years ago because my boss at the time told me I would never be worth more than $34,000 to his company. What? Okay.
Yeah.
And that was after I created a business case for myself and quantified my worth and my value in the market. And my mom always taught me you never let anyone else determine your value or your worth. So there's shift number one,
Nice.
right? As soon as I was put in a box of what my worth was, I said, I don't think this is going to work for me anymore. Right. So, Tracy, it's listening to that inner voice, right? Someone said to me today, I just had a conversation about this, about why I started my most recent company. And I said, I listened to my body. Our body is the most important messenger that we have. And when something doesn't feel right, and that's continuous, we need to pay attention. So in that moment, when the boss said to me, you're never going to be worth more than $34,000 to me, I said, it's time to go. And I didn't know where I was going or what that was going to look like, but that was a shift, right? Because someone devalued me. And then when I started my first company, Information Experts, and I grew that for 17 years, there were a lot of things that happened along the way in that company that again told me it was time to shift. And we could do a whole look episode on this, like the strategic aspects of running a company and when it's time for a CEO to step down. We're not going to talk about that today, but I can remember when I felt in my body that it was time for me to go. So that was shift number two. Then I launched Successful Culture. That was shift number three. Then I wanted to take that to the next level, and I knew I couldn't do it by myself. That was shift number four. In between, there was another company that I started. And then it was about 15 months ago that I said, I think successful culture for me is coming to its end. And I felt the shift again. But just because we feel the shift, Tracy, doesn't mean that we can act on it immediately. And so it's having the patience and being okay with letting it unfold, but still listening to that voice inside that says it's time to shift.
Listen, that's not easy to do. And
Mhm.
you think there's a process to that. You made that sound super simplistic. Oh, the shift, I felt it. And then, it takes a little time. Can you dig in a little bit on that, Marissa? Tell me a little bit more about that process for you.
Yes. So with I'll use the sale of my company. All right. I felt it. I was feeling that my spirit was suffocated. I just felt suffocated. Today, when I had a conversation about that, I felt like a soda bottle that had been shaken up with a lid on it, and that energy just had nowhere to go, right? I felt that, but I knew I had to be patient, and the whole process of me selling my company was one of the most spiritually evolutionary processes and shifts I've ever experienced, and I've been on a very deep spiritual path and journey for over 30 years. A practitioner of Buddhism. I have a very deep my spiritual path is the essence of who I am. And this process of selling my company was by far one of the most spiritually educational and evolutionary processes of my entire life so far, because I had to, I knew what I had to do. And by the way, I dreamt that I sold my company to my buyer. That's how it all manifested spiritually for me. I literally dreamt it. And I texted her and I said, Molly, I dreamt that you're buying my company. And she said, no, 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 we're not in that place. And I said, I'm just telling you what I dreamt. And then the whole thing manifested. And I've known her
Wow.
for many years. So um, I had to be in a place of very deep emotional investment in this. And I had to be in a place of deep non attachment to know that no matter how it ended, I was still the same person, that my identity was not tied to an outcome, that the seed of my consciousness remain unchanged regardless of what transpired. I had to remain in a place of patience and
Mm,
stillness for 9 months as we went through the whole legal and due diligence process of selling the company. I had to remain simultaneously in my past, present, and future in every moment for 9 months because I had to be talking about what we built. I had to be servicing my clients and I had to be laying out my future.
mm-hmm.
So through all of that, every day I would come home from work or I would, end the day and I had to dissolve the day spiritually and go right back to who I was at the seat of my consciousness, regardless of what was transpiring around me. And nothing has taught me the lesson of non attachment more than this process.
Oh my gosh. I do not have this lesson down. I'm just gonna tell you. I am the worst. Like I'm listening to you with a lot of envy. Is that the right word? I know the emotion. I've got to name those right. But like I definitely stayed in a job too long. My body was telling me to go, but my mind was like, no, no, no. I mean, I was not gonna leave. I had to get fired from that job to leave. And I look back now and go, oh my gosh, like that should have happened like 18 years earlier than it happened. And even as I'm listening to you now, I can tell you that for my experience, it is I worry, is my gut reaction and is my body betraying me in a way that like, is there a bias at play here? How do you know? Is it your spirituality that grounds you in a way that says when you know, you just know? Because I'm trained to think, question everything. And that if you do have a good gut feeling, it could be a bias that's at play. So and I do the work for a living, but it's still kind of hard for me to navigate that. Do you have any advice if and there might not be anybody else in the audience like me, but how do you get to that place where you have gotten that says, I'm just gonna release this and trust?
It really gets back to my spirit. Um, some people said to me, "You're so courageous about selling something that was already built and established and literally moving into nothing that exists yet." Right. But for me, the idea of staying in something that I knew was suppressing my spirit, where I couldn't be fully free to express, that to me was like a prison.
Sure.
And so I have a knowing that I'll be okay. And I think that that's the answer for your question. When you can get to the point where you have a knowing that you will be okay because you are following your dharma, you're following your soul's purpose, right? You are in alignment with what you are meant to do here. When you have that knowing, that's when you can release what no longer serves you. And I just feel it. Like I am meant here. I'm meant to be here to help people remember who they are at their core, to unlearn everything that they've learned, the roles that have been imposed upon them, the masks that they wear, right? The self-limiting beliefs, the stories. I'm here to help them peel those away and reconnect with their true nature, which will bring them to their inner joy. I just know that that's why I'm here. And to not do that work is literally a prison for me.
Mm. Ugh. What do you think keeps people from being open to this concept that you're talking about? Because there will be some people listening going, "Oh, yeah, yeah," and other people will be like, "How do I do that?"
So it's fear, and fear is grounded in the illusion that we actually have control over the outcome. So we've been programmed by different social constructs. We've been programmed by messages that we've been told, that we've grown up with. It really is being defined by fear and empowering fear that if I don't stay in this job, well, what security will I have? if I don't stay in this relationship, who will love me? Will I be alone? Right? It's it's looking at the question of the worst case scenario, but the worst case scenario is not living in your authenticity. That's the worst case scenario, is not living who you are supposed to be, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So for me, the work that I do to help people move through transformation is I help them along their soul's journey. And one of my most important spiritual teachers is Ram Dass. He just I embody so much of what he talks about. And so one of the things that I think I'm here to help carry on, that he imparted in the world, is the importance of being a place where people can come up for air and just breathe and be who they are and help them remember who they are. So because I know that about myself, to be in that in every moment is the only way I want to move through the world. And so when we have that feeling inside of ourselves, like when we are depleted at the end of every day, when we're exhausted, when we feel that what we're doing during the day is an obligation rather than an opportunity, that's that's a message that we need to pay attention to.
Yeah. Agreed. Agreed. And I want to add to that, I still want you to help this audience with, if you can. And I've looked at, you have like the path back to self worth. I believe you have some super cool giveaways you're going to give away. We'll tell them how at the end of it.
Sure.
But as I was getting prepared for this, I started looking through that, and I was like, I just went so, I was like, oh my gosh, this is like how to actually put this into practice, how to do it. So I always think about the people that are like, yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I've got 3 kids. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mm,
I got, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. And what she's saying is great. However, it's really a decision, and you just mentioned it, which is the decision to get back to that place instead of being on the hamster wheel, I guess, so to speak. So how do you provide that space for people that are interested in the work?
And before I answer that, Tracy, let me just provide some context.
Good.
I had two sons who are 25 and almost 22. I raised them hands on while I grew my companies.
Nice.
I get it, right? I understand being overwhelmed and underwater, and I'm a cancer survivor. All right. So I get it. I really understand. I have been on the I have struggled with depression and anxiety along my path. In my first company, I brought back from the brink of bankruptcy a few times. I mean, I understand what it is to be emotionally, spiritually, mentally underwater. Okay. But I'm on the other side of it now. And because I spent so much time there, I can tell you that no matter how um, difficult it is to get to the other side where you are living your soul's purpose, it's worth it.
Mm, sure.
It's worth it. So, how do you do it? It starts with awareness that where you are isn't sustainable. It starts with that awareness. And then it starts with, and then it continues with creating that courage to say, I am ready to change. And, I've been coaching leaders and CEOs for decades, right?
Yep.
I am never going to be in the business of selling an idea, convincing them that they need this. This is something that someone has to feel inside that they're ready to do the work. I am simply a facilitator. As a friend of mine, Yannick Silber, who runs Maverick, which I highly encourage everybody to take a look at, Maverick1000.com, best organization. As he tells me, I'm a lighthouse. I am just a guide and a lighthouse for others who want to get on the path of living in their highest purpose. We all have it. And there is not one of us on this planet that wasn't gifted with a soul's purpose. It's having the courage to pursue that, to reject what doesn't fill our spirits. And that takes a lot because we've got a lot of people depending on us.
Yep.
And there are a lot of people around us that have a lot of opinions on how we should live our lives. And it's being in that place of self love strong enough that you're willing to say, I hear you, but I need to be where I need to be.
You are the second guest I've had recently to mention Lighthouse. There's
Mm.
something about lighthouses happening. I had and Meg Myers Morgan, shout out to her, did a podcast with her last week, and I've got the lighthouse doesn't chase boats up on my wall. The metaphor of, I mean, just that is so. I get that, and I'm listening to you say that to be the lighthouse. You're using it in a little bit different context. However, it's the same thing, staying steady, knowing you're here for a particular reason. And I love it when people have crossed over to that space where they have that knowing. And I'm probably somewhere in the middle of that, but I feel like I have crossed over in the sense that I know I'm supposed to be a conduit and a messenger and bring people like you to other people to get their experience. I still want to make sure we know that shift to playing bigger, as we call it a lot on the
Mhm.
show. That shift to playing bigger. Once you have that kind of awareness, and you're like, man, this isn't sustainable, as you said a second ago, and I know there's something bigger for me. That's really the beginning as you just described
It
it.
is.
What would somebody need to do right now if they're in that space?
Well, reach out to me. We've got lots of programs for that. But I will add that, and this is where my strategic side comes in, right? Because I'm very much the intersection of spirituality and strategy, because you need both.
Yep.
I put a strategic framework around manifestation. That's what I do. So when someone has a vision, I'm a manifester, I'm a visionary. When I have an idea and I have a vision, it requires a strategic framework. And I've built multiple businesses. I know how to operationalize a manifestation. And so that's what I do for our clients, right? Or for my clients. I help them step into their highest vision of themselves, and then I operationalize that by putting a strategic framework around it. And there's a whole process for that. But that really is what you have to do. You've got to go into manifestation with a plan. You just do, with a strategic framework, right? With a blueprint or a roadmap. It can't just be that you've got this pie in the sky idea. So, like for me, as I build this company, right now, I am in stealth building mode completely. I am shedding everything that is not aligned with my revenue goals for next year, for my vision. Someone asked me today. I'm constantly reaching out, and I'm a sponge. Like I believe we are always at base camp from a learning perspective, and there's so much I don't know. Even at this point, 30 years in, 5 businesses launched. There's so much, Tracy, that I don't know. So I'm constantly reaching out to people who I can learn from. I'm in a mastermind group. I'm in a forum with other CEOs. I'm about to join another mastermind group. I soak up as much as I possibly can, always listening. And someone asked me today, as he was telling me about his mastermind group that I'm probably going to join, what do you see for yourself? And I went big, Tracy. I went big. And I said, I see myself filling stadiums. I went big. And behind that, every person that I work with now and everything that I do has to be aligned to that vision. I
Mm.
just don't have the energy or the time to invest in things that aren't aligned with my vision from a business perspective. So it's being really focused. You can think big, but I now have this freedom, this blank slate ahead of me now that I've sold my other company and I'm building Marissa International. I have a great blank slate. So I've got that freedom. And what I told one of my other business partners today on a call, I said, I now realize that I have to harness that energy of that freedom.
Mm.
Freedom that is not harnessed is just unbridled energy, right? Without boundaries around your freedom, it's not going to take you anywhere.
Mm.
So I've put boundaries around my freedom to get me to the end state of my vision. I'm operationalizing my manifestation with a strategic framework.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I have three things.
And that
One
was
is
all literally stream of consciousness.
I
Like,
loved
it
it.
was the first time I ever said any of that.
You did great. And here's what's I'm just going to tell you when you said you saw you in stadiums, I'm not going to lie, I saw it. So I did see it. I'm not going to lie, I did see myself on that in that stadium with you
You're
somehow.
coming with me, baby. We know that we are just starting our journey.
That's right.
There's
That's right.
no doubt.
I know, but I do think that sometimes we need to give people permission to think big. I was on a plane one time and I was listening to these two people behind me, and the plane hadn't taken off. So it was still kind of quiet. And the short version is the one guy was saying to his friend, "Yeah, I gotta, I've got to, my son's playing football. He's a nose guard. And, he's like, he thinks he's going to play in the pros, and he's like completely like, dismissing his son's dream to play in the NFL. And I'm listening to that and I'm thinking, gosh, and it was so negative in a way that I started kind of listening a little bit more. And then the other person asked the exact right question. How old is your son? 11. I was like, he's 11? Like, he can get better? Like, and this is who you are to, like, I just thought there's a lot of people that every time they started to think big as kids, or they had that big imagination, when you started talking about boundaries, you were talking about structure and you were talking about helpful guides, but guideposts maybe. But sometimes those people that are most influential to us are the ones that we give all of our power to. And
Absolutely.
yeah, so is that a big part of the work that people have to do, is to let go of some of those messages they were given from that, well-intentioned people?
That is a crucial part of it, a crucial part. And I have something called the power paradigm as one of my frameworks, and it stands for purpose, ownership, worth, efficacy, and resilience. So, really stepping into your core purpose, taking ownership for your outcome, which means removing yourself from that victim role, right? Like, just taking back ownership of your own belief systems, of your own knowing, of your own outcomes. And then the self-worth piece, which we do so much, and that's where we dismantle the stories, we dismantle the self-limiting beliefs. I have something, Tracy, that I'll provide to every all of your listeners called a worth wheel. It's a tool that I created, and there are 6 or 7 different identities on that worth wheel with questions to be asked, such as, how is your identity shaped by the relationships in your life? What if you don't have those relationships? Who are you?
Mm.
How is your identity shaped by your financial status in terms of how much money's in your bank account? What about material identity? Your car, the clothing you wear, the bag you carry, the home you live in. If all of that went away, are you still connected to who you are? So there's 6 or 7 different identity elements on my worth wheel. And we do that work in the self worth piece of the power paradigm and individually through my self worth rebirth program, which we're launching. And that's where we go really deep in peeling back all of that stuff that has clouded and muddied up and covered the essence of who you are. We,
Wow.
we do that work very deeply.
Are you familiar with Byron Katie?
Of course.
Yeah, so that I
Love
was
her.
introduced yeah, I was introduced to the work through Byron Katie, her book, Who Would You Be Without Your Story, and
Mhm.
Loving What Is. And the first time when I bought Who Would You Be Without Your Story, I like stared at the cover for, I don't know, a few months before I dug in, because the question was so big for me. Right? Like the
Brave work,
store
isn't it?
it's amazing, and it's not easy, and
Mhm.
it's not fast, and we're all still doing the work, but to question your own thoughts. I had a session today with a couple hundred, people, in an organization, one of our clients, and I put up on the screen the last thing, "Don't believe everything you think," because everything we talked about for that whole hour was all of these stories that we're telling ourselves, we believe them to be true if you don't investigate. where the origin of those stories,
Right.
and what I don't have, and it sounds like you are providing to our audience here, is that framework is so incredibly important. So
Mm,
I'm gonna put an exclamation point on this, that you're willing to give some things to our audience,
definitely.
and I might sign up for your program, not gonna lie, when this is over.
Yay.
I do think that's important though, that people at least investigate, wherever you are right now. How did you get there? What were the thoughts you had to be thinking? And what are some of the things you can do to manipulate? And I always think manipulate's a good word, not a bad word. Manipulate your future in a way that is more aligned to, and you said it best, your authentic self and your purpose. So some people are like, this is woo. No, it's not. This is why you're on earth.
This
This
is
is
right.
That's right. Like,
Right, right. And the whole self worth rebirth program, not only does it help people to reconnect with their self worth, but what I do is I link it to their net worth because how much we value ourselves is tied directly to our self worth. And so we're all out there making a living, right? So many people who are disconnected from their self worth, they don't charge what they're worth. Like they
mm,
don't, their value is so skewed. And so my intention, and the thing about money is it's a vehicle. It's a gateway to freedom, to live the life that we want. It's not making money for the sake of money. To me, money is a bartering tool, right? But if we can understand that connection between self worth and net worth, and we can truly step into our self worth, no one, Tracy, will ever value us more than we value ourselves.
that's right.
Ever.
That's right.
We alone set the standard for how people value us. And so if we are undervaluing ourselves because we're not connected to our own worth, you can bet that we're leaving money on the table.
Oh, there's no question.
Right. So
Listen.
I make that link and then I bring in the strategic side of me to help them build a business plan around their new redefined self-worth.
Nice.
Yeah.
How long does the program last
It's
typically?
going to be 3 months. It's intense. It's an
Perfect.
intense 3 months, but I'm not looking to keep people tied up for a year. Like, let's do this work. And then after the 3 months, there's opportunity for group coaching and individual coaching. But I'm here to get people moving and stepping into their joy and stepping into their worth.
So Kara Moore, who is a colleague of mine, and she does a lot of work around sustainability. And I heard her recently say that, it takes 62 days to change the brain, where we all heard and thought, I did, that it was 21 days to makes a habit. Not true. Turns out that to recreate those neural pathways
Mhm.
in your brain, it's
Yeah.
62 days. So I love hearing you say 3 months,
Yeah.
because that's the full cycle of embracing change. Is that
It
true?
is. It
Okay.
is. Yes. Yeah. I mean, my assistant and I, my Sherpa, I mean, she's like my, she's what keeps me moving. We actually spend a lot of time. We invested a lot of time by going, how long should it be? We need to keep them in there for a certain amount of time to get the work done. But we've got to be mindful that, we don't want to completely immerse them for, 4 to 6 months. So the way we've structured it, it's an intense program with a lot of tools. But I'm going to be there with them every step of the way. This isn't videotaped. I mean, this is me engaged with the group. And that was the other reason why I wanted to keep it at 3 months, because the 3 months following will be for the one-on-one and, for the more intimate coaching.
Sure.
So I had to, I had to look at how I was going to make that work.
Listen, so this kind of a shift that you're talking about, and by the way, the company you sold, multi-million dollar, like this is a big company you walked away from, right? Or sold, we'll say, better to do this work. Like this is when you think about how many people you're influencing, and you're wanting to help people find their joy. I don't know. I think you're exactly the right person at exactly the right time. I'm so thrilled that we have connected. What else? I know we're kind of coming. We've got, I've got so many questions. I know we don't have
Sure.
probably enough time, but is there anything else that you would like to, impart on the audience? Any other tools or anything else that we could leave our audience with?
I would just, invite them to listen to this a few times because we covered a lot,
Yes.
right? We covered, a lot about the spiritual path. We covered a lot about getting in touch with your authenticity. We talked about fear. We talked about doing that work around self-worth. We talked about the process of transformation. We covered a lot. So I really would recommend listening to this a few times. One of my favorite books also is The Four Agreements by Don
Sure.
Miguel Ruiz. That really kind of is like the Bible for me in terms of how I move through the world. Be impeccable with your word. Don't take anything personally. Don't make assumptions and always do your best, knowing that your best varies from moment to moment, day to day, right? Month to month, week to week. But know that the tools are out there for you and that you don't have to walk this path alone, which is exactly why I stepped into this work to accompany everyone on the path to self worth, to inner joy, to reconnection with their highest purpose. I don't want them to walk the path alone. I'm here to walk it with them.
Listen, you mentioned the 4 agreements. I cannot not ask you. So the second one is always the hard one, don't take anything personally, or the one that you said. What Give us just a little sense for you. What is a practice if people have a tendency to take things personally? What would you offer them?
So, Tracy, the first time I read that book, it had to be over 20 years ago,
Yep.
25 years ago. I mean, when it first came out, I had been living that book for decades. I don't know how to go through life now, not from that frame of reference. I believe that uh, I'm always a witness and a participant in my life. Like I always feel like I'm on the dance floor doing the dance of life, but I'm also in the balcony overlooking, looking at myself doing the dance. I'm always in the place of both participation and observation. And my belief system, my knowing is that we're all on a soul's journey. We're all a soul in a human form. And so I I live from a place of compassion, and I just don't know how to go through life any other way. So I know that everybody is in their moment, always doing their best, even if sometimes the way people act doesn't seem like that. And I just have a knowing that no matter how someone shows up, it's not personal. And it's the same
Wow.
thing with me. I mean, you know, I'm I'm a spiritual being in a human form, and sometimes I don't human very well, you know. I
I
mean,
do know.
sometimes I really am messy. I don't human very well sometimes, but we're all doing our best. And I just it's just how I look at life.
I'm a little behind you on this one because for me, I have a little bit of a mantra. This affects me, but this isn't about me. So when I feel myself getting pulled into something and I start to take something personally, getting out of the judgment business. There's a lot of I think things that we bring to ourselves. I have on a board in front of me. The most selfish thing you can do is see yourself as a victim,
Mm,
and I don't know. I think I'm interested in exploring the difference between. I'll ask your opinion about it. The difference between somebody being self-focused
yeah.
and somebody being self-centered. Do you think there's a difference between those two? I'm putting you on the spot here. This was not in any of the pre stuff, but what do you think?
So I think being self-centered is the mindset of how does this affect me? How does
Yes,
this affect me? Just always from that frame of reference is how does this affect me? Being self-focused, being self-aware, expressing self-love. We can't pour from an empty cup. We
that's right.
can't give to other people if we are empty within ourselves. We also can't give something to someone else that we don't have. So if we don't have love within ourselves, we don't have that love to give to somebody else. So taking care of ourselves is good for not only our soul, but it's good for everybody. When people are in that place of self love, they don't feel the need to be on defense. They don't
Yeah,
need to be in a place of self preservation. When they trust the universe and they trust the world around them, because they know that intuitively they're going to be okay. that's good for everyone. I live
Yeah,
outside of DC, and Department of Defense here is massive, right?
sure.
There's a really small building called Department of Peace. When you drive into DC, like coming down down 66 and heading into DC, there's this beautiful building on the left that probably most people don't see, and it's really small, and it's called Department of Peace. And I've always wondered if they have that backwards, that they have this like mammoth structure that's Department of Defense and there's a really small building of Department of Peace. And what would the world have been like if we would have reversed those two,
Mm.
right?
What would the world be like if we did that ourselves, right?
Exactly, right? So
Yeah.
when we can move through the world from a place of peace and trust rather than defense, that heals
Yeah.
everybody.
So hard to do, and yet that's where joy is, isn't it?
It is. Joy is within peace.
Define joy for us, for the audience. When you say you want 1 billion people to live in joy, what does that mean?
I want them to feel connected to their soul. I want them to feel connected to their most authentic self, and I want them to know that they are perfect exactly the way they are.
Mm. Is there one decision somebody could make today to start this work? What's the simplest entry into joy? Said a little bit about that self-awareness, but what else? Is there anything else we could offer our audience?
Go to the mirror, look at yourself, and say, I love you.
Mm.
That's the first step.
Sounds simple. Not easy, but simple, right?
See the beauty in your own reflection.
Mm. So many books come to mind when I hear you, Eckhart Tolle, The New Earth. I
Mhm.
assume you have read that, and
Oh,
I
sure.
guess, yeah, the first time one of the exercises is to go out and sit under a tree and experience what would the tree be if you didn't know the name?
Mm.
And I was like, "Oh my god." I mean, I don't know. For those of you listening in, it is profound, and yet some of it seems silly, and yet some of it seems unattainable. But there's something in this, if and Marissa said it best, if you can just get connected to it and really get whether it's listening to this a few times or start to do the work. We've adjusted some filters today. I know that for sure, where people will start to hopefully be open to some of these concepts. The opposite of joy, though, would be what?
So that's an interesting question. I know what the if you asked me what the opposite of love was, I would say there is no opposite. There's only disconnection from love. Uh, Pain, anger, regret, all the negative emotions, they're not the opposite of love. They're a disconnect from love. So I think when we can return back to love is when we can be in our joy. I think that they're connected. There really isn't an opposite of joy. It really is a disconnection from joy. And I want to just get back to when you were asking me about what people can do. I think they can also evaluate what I call their content diet. What are they allowing into their their brains, their minds, their hearts? What are they listening to?
Mm,
I don't watch any TV or any news or anything. I only watch the Gaia Network, which is all about higher consciousness and the science of spirituality. And what I listen to is all about being connected to our higher self. It's all about self awareness, self growth, self love, learning from others who are also in that realm. So I think being very mindful of your content diet and what you're allowing to come into your energetic field is the other tactical thing that people can do today to really start weeding out the messages, of negativity, of violence, of gossip, of inflammatory information. Watch your social media intake. I'm never on social media. So there are things that people can do today from a tactical perspective to start shifting their energy.
Mm. Ooh, I love that. I love the, just when you said shifting the energy, when people go on vacation, I just talked to somebody recently, that is doing a digital detox, and,
Mhm.
she said that the first 2 days, she said it was worse than quitting smoking. She was like, I had, I kept looking for my phone, and she said, once I got kinda through to day 3 and day 4, she said, I just had no idea how dependent I was on that tiny electronic
Mhm.
device, and but this was the most important thing, and the negative energy that it was putting, in my proximity, and I was like, "That's so interesting," because
Yeah,
I'm a news junkie. I kinda like, the red lights. They have caught me for sure, in that, and I think that, that a lot of people are trying to do a detox. It seems like this newer generation is probably gonna, I think, swing to the not being so reliant on digital devices, the younger people coming on,
sure.
and privacy is gonna be a lot more important to them. Do you think that's true?
Yeah, I mean, I have kids who are 22 and 25, and I think that the way that they use the content, to stay connected to their friends, they've really learned how to rein it in
Nice.
and not going to get, drawn into all of the inflammatory stuff or anything like that. The other thing about the social media platforms is that the artificial intelligence, it watches everything that you post, it watches everything that you respond to. We've gotten into such a, this cycle of being able to respond and contribute just literally knee-jerk reaction. There's no thinking anymore about what people write, and that's a dangerous place to be. And then the artificial intelligence is constantly monitoring that. So, you weigh in on something that is controversial, or provocative or divisive. And before you know it, your whole feed is filled with the same stuff. Right. So it just we talk about being a victim. How much are you a victim to all of the social media uh, propaganda that's out there? If you're on autopilot, you're a victim to that.
Yeah. Okay. Listen, before we hang up, tell the audience, how can they find you, Marissa? And you've got a couple of giveaways that you said
I
you were
do.
doing too.
Yeah.
So tell me
So,
more.
MarissaInternational.com. It's right on the screen. And they can email me, Marissa@MarissaInternational.com. Definitely follow me on LinkedIn. Marissa Levin one is on LinkedIn. Marissa International is on LinkedIn. It's on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I'm kind of everywhere. And so sign up for my blog. I've got some really good tools for everybody that reaches out. I'll definitely give them the interactive worth wheel, which I think will be really beneficial. And I've got a white paper on the process of evolution and transformation. And then I have a white paper on the path back to self love. And I
Mm.
think those will be really helpful for everyone that's listening.
Listen, I've seen them, and they were so well done, beautifully
Yeah.
done, and,
Thank you.
I just wanna say thank you. I'm so glad you reached out, and I'm so glad we made this happen, and, let's continue this conversation, offline for sure.
No,
Because I
most definitely. And your listeners should learn from me. Like I reached out, right? So you could have said no, but how would I have known if I didn't try? And so right there, Tracy, is a lesson, right? Go for what you want. Go for what speaks to your heart. The worst thing that will happen is you will be right where you were.
Well said, that's a perfect ending. Listen, thank you, my friend, I'm glad that we're connected.
It was wonderful.